The reason your game is not finished is probably not because you cannot code. It is because you are trying to build the dream game before you have learned how to finish the tiny game. So I tested something simple. One player, one coin, one win message. That is it. Then I built the same tiny game 4 different ways. The Java console, an Android app using Java, a Java GUI, and UEFN. The aim was not to make the perfect game, but to show you and prove that the small finished projects teach you more than the massive unfinished ideas. And that is it. Instead of starting with a massive game idea, I asked myself a much smaller question, which is, what is the smallest playable thing I can finish? Not the most impressive thing, not the most beautiful thing, and definitely not the thing that will compete with a studio. Just something finished. And the answer to that was simple. A player collects a coin, a message appears, a game ends. And that is the full loop. That is the whole loop. It sounds tiny, but tiny loop teaches a lot. It teaches input, it teaches game state, it teaches feedback, and lastly, it teaches win conditions. And maybe the most important thing out of the 4 is that it teaches you how to finish, because starting a project is easy, but finishing them is still a skill. The first version I built was the Java console version. So this meant that there was no game engine, no graphics, no animations, just text, input, and logic. And to be honest, this is why I like starting here, because when you remove all the visuals, you are forced to understand the actual game loop, which is, where is the player? Where is the coin? What happens when the player moves? And what happens when the player reaches the coin? How does the game know that the player has won? And this is game development. It may not look exciting yet, but the thinking is real. This version teaches you the foundation. It teaches you input, it teaches you state, rules, feedback, win conditions, and before you worry about making a game look good, you need to first prove that that mechanic actually works. The second version was the Android application I built in Android Studio. So pretty much the same idea, the same coin, the same basic win conditions. However, the environment changed, right? So instead of thinking about only console inputs, I had to think about the screen. Where does the player appear? When does the coin appear? And how does the player interact on the mobile app? And what does feedback look like on a phone? And this is the lesson. You don't need a completely new game idea every time you change a platform. You can take the small mechanic and learn something new from the environment. The console version taught me logic. The Android version teaches me interaction. It teaches me how to build layout, how to incorporate touch capabilities, and mobile thinking. Still the same idea, still small, still simple, but the idea has grown one layer, and that is the point. Do not add 10 systems at once. Add one layer, test it, finish it, then move on to the next layer. The third version was the Java GUI version, or the GUI version. This is where the idea starts to feel more visual. It is still Java, it is still the same coin game, but now we are moving away from text only. Now there is a window, there is something on the screen. There is positioning, there is visual feedback. The player can see where they are and they can see where the coin is. And when the coin is collected, the game can respond visually. This version sits in a nice middle ground. It is not as simple as the console, but it is also not as heavy as a full game engine. And that makes it useful because now you start connecting programming language or programming logic with what the player actually sees. And the lesson here is simple. A game does not become better just because you add more complexity. It becomes better when each layer makes the experience clearer. Consoles teach the logic. The Java GUI or the GUI teaches the visual feedback. The same idea, the new lesson. This version I built was the UEFN version, and this is where the same tiny idea started to feel like an actual game space. Now, I have a player in a world, a collectible in the level, an HUD message, and an end game condition. However, I want you to notice something important. The idea is still not massive. It is not a battle royale. It is not an open world. It is not a full story campaign. Back to the basics. It is still just collect the coin, show the message, end the game, and that is the loop. And this is where a lot of beginners get trapped. They open a powerful game engine like Unity or Unreal Engine or Roblox and immediately think they need a powerful first project, but you don't. A powerful engine does not mean your first project must be huge. Your first goal is not to impress anyone or everyone. Your first goal is to finish something playable. UEFN makes it look more polished, but the lesson is the same. Start with one mechanic, make it work, give the player the feedback they need, and then end the experience. And that is the game loop. And once that loop works, you can build on top of it. So after building the same idea 4 different ways, this is what became clear to me. The tool is not the main thing. Java is not the main thing. Android Studio is not the main thing. Java GUI or GUI is not the main thing, and definitely UEFN is not the main thing. What you need to focus on is the loop. Can the player do something? Can the game respond? Can the player understand what happened? And can the experience end? This is what matters, because a lot of beginners are not stuck because they have no ideas. They are stuck because their first idea is too heavy. Too many systems, too many features, too many pressures. Oh, too much pressure, too much comparisons. And then they wonder why a project dies before it even becomes playable. However, when you start small, you give yourself a chance to finish. And when you finish, you learn. The next project becomes better. Not because you watched another tutorial, but because you completed something. And that is confidence. That is a confidence builder. That is where you get your confidence. So you're not planning forever, or you're not always stuck in planning mode. You're not just collecting tools, certificates, skills, and tutorials, but you're not waiting for the perfect engine to be released or the perfect tutorial to be released. The aim, one thing that you should be aiming for is, so here is my challenge to you. Do not start with your dream game. Start with one tiny playable thing. It could be one coin, one button, one enemy, one door, one timer, one win condition. Make it work. Show the feedback, then end the game. That is enough. Because once you finish one small thing, you are no longer just someone with game ideas. You are someone who finishes games. And that identity matters. The bigger games can come later. However, for now, build the muffin. Bake the muffin before you try to bake the cake. Start small, finish it, then build the next thing.